What a fun couple of months it's been, running through these three classic games. I'll admit I was thrilled, but also a little heartbroken to finally roll credits on this capstone title. You only get one first playthrough, and I'm left with nothing but the hope that I at least did them all justice. Lucky for me, the job isn't over quite yet. I've still got one more video to record, and I feel so fortunate to get to document my experience of Resident Evil 3 with all of you wonderful people. So the last two episodes have had me absolutely gushing over Resident Evil 1 and 2. The setting, the music, the stories, the gameplay, you name it, I loved it. But Resident Evil 3, at least for myself, was not as smooth of an experience. I found RE3 to be a game of moments. Moments that left me speechless, moments that left me wanting a bit more, and moments that had me saying things like, dude, what the f***? What the f***, this f***ing game? Oh my god, this game. But knowing how I feel is only half the story, so let's dive deeper into Raccoon City and discover the why in all of this. And a good place to start is the game's opening puzzle. One so difficult I had to look up the answer online, and I hadn't even technically started the game yet. Do I play the game on hard or easy? What happened to normal? What kind of twisted decision is this? Okay, jokes aside, it was the opening cinematic that really caught my eye. From strictly a technical standpoint, I couldn't tell you how much better these cutscenes look when compared to Resident Evil 2, as both of these games released on the same console, but my eyes were telling my brain that a bunch of cool shit was happening on screen, and the amount of moving parts and pretty good looking facial animations did kind of blow me away. And this was consistent throughout the entire game. Capcom was really going for a more cinematic experience, and to do this, they increased the amount of cutscenes, the length of cutscenes, and the quality of cutscenes. Even cinematic moments that use the in-game models felt more impactful, and I attribute that to much improved writing and really solid line delivery. Something I never thought I'd say about classic Resident Evil. Side characters of the past like Barry, Sherry, and Ada were all fine in principle, but none of them felt like actual people.
Oh, Barry!
That was too close. You were almost a Jill sandwich.
But RE3 certainly accomplished this for me. A character like Mikhail has brief but impactful screen time. Every dialogue we share with him paints a picture of loyalty, grit, and general badassery. But after becoming injured, shares feelings of shame that he can't be of more use to the party. Fitting that he would ultimately go out in a blaze of glory after making one of the biggest saves in the franchise.
Jill, get out of the cable car now!
Mikhail, wait, don't!
Get out of here! Hurry! Come on!
Jill herself has a character transformation, a bit more rough and tough, not afraid to put her foot down, but still shows a strong moral compass and prioritizes the safety of others above her own. I definitely compare it to Leon's development from Resident Evil 2 to 4, just a bit less extreme. And last but not least was maybe the biggest surprise for me coming out of RE3, the newest goat on the block, Carlos. Really. And last but not least, maybe the biggest surprise for me coming out of RE3, the newest goat on the block, Carlos Oliveira. This iteration of Carlos is amazing. He's witty and charming during downtime, but smart and reliable in a pinch. He's one of the few survivors remaining, and he can certainly hold his own, but that doesn't mean he's infallible either. This guy has layers, just like a Matryoshka doll. Because despite his abilities, he is but a young man of 21 years and has his breaking points as any reasonable person would.
But we don't have any other choice than to trust them right now.
No, if we're gonna die, then we should get to choose when it happens.
So that's it then, huh? You're giving up?
No. I can't handle it.
having courage doesn't mean you aren't afraid. Having courage means you do fear, but have the strength to push past it.
Stars. Stars.
This was the moment where Carlos solidified himself as one of the top characters in the franchise for me, and was probably my favorite aspect of this entire game, if I'm being completely honest. And on a gameplay front, I really liked Carlos's playable section at the hospital, much better than what they did in RE2 with Sherry and Ada. It was an extended section in a new area, that being the hospital. We got to use a new weapon and Carlos's fully automatic machine gun, even if it was a bit of a pea shooter. We fought some new enemies in the Hunters, and it played a significant role in the narrative as Carlos had to get the antidote to heal Jill after being infected by Nemesis. So yeah, I just enjoyed everything that Carlos brought to the table in RE3. Carlos, wherever you are, just know that I'd love to see you in a future installment. But let's move on to something a bit more curious, the setting, and what I feel is a lack of identity, at least compared to Resident Evil 1 and 2. What I mean is this: when you think of Resident Evil, what's the first image that pops in your mind? And ask yourself the same question for Resident Evil 2. I can give you my answers in a heartbeat. But what about Resident Evil 3? Is it the streets of Raccoon City, the clock tower, the park? Maybe it's not the setting at all, but it's characters, or character. It's an interesting shift from the prior two entries that leaned so heavily on their settings. The game instead pushed into the idea of traversing across this hellscape rather than staying in one central location. But you know what? It did answer some questions I had back when I played Resident Evil 2. I actually stood at this edge for a while and just listened to the background sound effects, allowing my imagination to kind of build a little bit of headcanon as to what some others might be going through out there. And honestly, it was pretty chilling stuff. That's right, I finally got my wish to see the going-ons of street-level Raccoon City. You start off in a fairly expansive downtown region, and I initially thought I'd be spending a majority of my time here. Jumping in and out of office buildings, restaurants, and back alleys almost felt like I was in an open world, like I could go anywhere and do anything. And might I say, it was absolute carnage. Just so beautiful. Rampant fires, trapped citizens, wreckage littered the streets, and more than anything, this city was bursting at the seams with undead flesh eaters. I quite liked it, but just as I was really starting to familiarize myself with the layout, I jumped on a train and sped off to the next area. And from there, the map design continued to get more and more condensed. Each new area felt like a small chunk of what you'd find at a Spencer Mansion or RPD. These chunks were then spaced out into separate levels and tackled in a linear fashion. It wasn't bad, but I did prefer the larger Metroidvania style of map design from the first two games. I felt that this more condensed style really hampered the developers' abilities to create impactful backtracking objectives, something that had been so imperative in the series thus far. I can't tell you how many times I found a key to a locked door just one room away. Hell, there were times I'd find keys in the same damn room as the lock. What was even the point? What was the desired result? Was I supposed to get an endorphin rush or something? It seemed to me that some of these environmental puzzles, if you could even call them that, were put in the game more due to obligation, because that's what the series was known for. It just felt off and left me scratching my head. But when the team did decide it was puzzle time, there were a few that I really enjoyed. From what I've seen online, a lot of people hate the water sample puzzle, and I get it. It was a tough one, but it was maybe my favorite puzzle of the entire trilogy. I was absolutely stumped at first, sure, but once I realized that the machine required all 3 samples on the 1st and 7th column, it was all over, and I felt like a fucking genius. Now, the paintings in the clock tower is an entirely different story. I never figured that shit out and just kept trying different arrangements until it worked. So we'll label my opinion on Resident Evil 3's puzzles as mixed. But this title had more changes to throw at me, and none more impactful than the speed of the game. Zombies, yes, I finally get to talk about the zombies. These guys got quite the makeover in Resident Evil 3. First and foremost, they've got a few new animations when walking or stumbling around. Once again, the attention to visual detail seemed to be a major focus. And yeah, their animations seemed so much more fluid, borderline lifelike. But what really threw me for a loop was the increase in speed and numbers. I noticed almost immediately that these standard zombies weren't just going to let me stand there and take them out from afar. Every now and then you'd come across one or several that could seriously close the distance. And that increase in speed really pertains to the entire game as a whole, but we'll get more into that a bit later. Additionally, as I mentioned, the undead, more often than not, are shuffling around in packs of 4, 5, or 6. Now this was a benefit of having the game take place in the open city. It makes perfect sense that the Spencer Mansion or RPD would only have 100 or so undead roaming the halls, and so it makes perfect sense that the outside world is positively swarming with them. I really did feel the difference both in terms of gameplay and grounding me into the game's setting. Raccoon City was positively fucked. So now that the standard enemy received a power-up, one might think that traversing the streets would be incredibly difficult, and if you were unprepared, sure, you could hit some roadblocks, but I was pleased to see that Jill got some interesting tweaks as well to help balance things out. First things first, the almighty quick turn was here. I wasn't sure when this mechanic first got introduced into the series, but it's legitimately one of my favorite things about Resident Evil, which sounds silly, but I've never understood why more games don't incorporate something like it. Maybe Capcom pulled the Warner Bros. Copyright strat on the mechanic. Who knows? You can also dodge in this game, which was helpful for the fast-moving hunters and the occasional boss moment. But I tried not to rely on it too much as I found it to be a little finicky, or it was just easier for me to run away. There was also an auto lock-on system in place, which I mostly liked. Holding the aim button would snap you towards the nearest enemy, but there were times where I wanted to shoot a different target, such as an explosive barrel, but the auto-aim kept pulling me to a nearby enemy instead. And yeah, there are explosives scattered around the environment to help once again with the hordes, and I was a big fan of that. But overall, the auto-aim helped a ton when enemies were off-screen. Just aim and pull the trigger for a guaranteed hit. And last but not least, the weapons and sheer amount of ammo drops were insane. In fact, they were a bit too much, in my opinion. The shotgun never failed to decapitate at close range, which made the large hordes of zombies a little bit less terrifying. And at one point in my playthrough, I had 73 shotgun shells in my inventory. Just ridiculous. In the older games, finding a 6-pack of shells felt like a godsend. In RE3, you can find them all over the damn place, and it makes it way less exciting. So all of these changes were made to help the player acclimate to the game's new challenges, but I still don't think it was enough. Now this will be the third classic Resident Evil video that I've made where I have to mention tank controls. I didn't think I would have to talk about them again in this video, but it's very, very brief, so hang in there, guys. Now I fully understand that this could have just been a me thing, but the tank controls and general RE formula work best when at a snail's pace. To me, these classic titles shine brightest with their slow, methodical exploration, careful positioning when engaging enemies, and Metroidvania-style backtracking. RE3 kind of betrays all of these core principles to varying degrees, and a big part of that has to do with the more action-oriented direction Capcom chose to go with a certain monster with a one-track mind. Yes, I made it 14 minutes into an RE3 review before finally mentioning its namesake. Now I do have mixed feelings on Nemesis. On one hand, he looks incredible. The concept of a true stalker-type enemy is fantastic, and he feels like a natural progression of what preceded him from both a gameplay and narrative standpoint. But on the other hand, this dude just needs to calm down. For better and for worse, oppressive is the word I would use to describe Nemesis. Each time he arrived on the screen, I absolutely felt my chest tighten and maybe a little bit of sweat on the palms. He achieved the desired effect. But his constant suffocating pursuit also prevented me from partaking in that desired, slow, methodical gameplay. There were times where I just wanted to look around, soak in the world, and possibly uncover some easy-to-miss secrets, but our old friend had other plans. Now, I said oppressive was the word I would use to describe Nemesis, but as I was typing this script, another word came to mind. Annoying. Like a fly that keeps buzzing in your ear while you're just trying to relax. Some said the same thing about Mr. X in the RE2 remake, but at least he was slow enough to be outmaneuvered, or you could simply duck into a safe room and allow him to de-aggro. Outside of a few tense scripted appearances, I rarely got excited when Nemesis jumped into frame. And his boss battles, holy shit. Holy shit, his boss battles felt absolutely horrendous to play, and I don't use that word lightly at all. And please note, this is my subjective experience. I'm sure there are people out there who were dodge masters and had no problem dealing with this guy, but each time I had to stand my ground and actually fight the humanoid version of Nemesis, I knew I was in for it. The controls just couldn't match the speed of this guy, and while I tried my best to use the dodge mechanic, I typically had the best luck just running around and choosing my openings extremely carefully. Some luck may have been involved as well. And I just want to note really quick, the guy in the gameplay that I'm showing here has unlimited magnum ammo, so clearly he's going to have a much easier time with this. Imagine me with just my standard shotgun, my pistols. It was a mess. I legitimately had to put the game down during the clock tower battle as I was getting dangerously close to chucking my Vita through a window. His final form was my favorite boss fight of the game, and wouldn't you know it, it was the encounter more focused on a dynamic puzzle than it was around dodging and running around. But like I said, from a narrative standpoint, hell yeah, I loved Nemesis, and I would definitely put him above Mr. X on cool factor alone. Umbrella liked what they had with Mr. X, but were disappointed in the lack of intelligence. Sprinkle in a bit of genetic modification and the T-103 model tyrant known as Nemesis was born. Increased athleticism, regenerative abilities, and the brains to use weapons and even speak. Nemesis has to be the most deadly weapon Umbrella ever produced and is the main driving force of the entire game. Now, you do have the side plot with the Umbrella military police, essentially. There's struggle, there's scheming, there's betrayal. You even have the secondary antagonist of Nikolai Genova? Is it Genova? He was fine, a little bit unoriginal, but he was good. I enjoyed everything that they brought to the table. But let's be real, Nemesis was essentially the entire plot. Escape Nemesis. Escape Raccoon City. Alright, so now it's time to talk about other key things that I couldn't fit into other sections of this video. Let's do it! Something I found kind of insane was the amount of hidden cutscenes and alternate paths to take in this game's narrative. RE3 provided these moments where you have to make a choice. I'm riding on a runaway train. Should I hit the emergency brake or jump out the window? I encounter Nemesis on a bridge. Do I jump down below or push him aside? Whichever you choose does typically provide different outcomes in the way of an altered cutscene, character placement, or the acquisition of different items. Same goes for the order in which you tackle objectives. In the hospital, if you take the elevator down, you'll be presented with a cutscene where Tyrell is killed by a hidden explosive. But if you go up the elevator first, a different cutscene will play where Tyrell is shot and killed by Nikolai. I also found that after dying, some puzzle solutions changed slightly. On my first attempt, I pulled a note off a doctor with the code 104. After dying and trying again, that code changed to 325. Little things like that can provide some replay value, so that was pretty cool to see. Next, we have a disappointing lack of music. RE1 was mostly silent, but RE2 had some absolute banger tracks. I expected them to keep that pace up with the sequel, but unfortunately, there's really nothing here outside of the save rooms. Another disappointment was the lack of environmental descriptions. In RE1 and 2, you could click on almost any part of the environment and a little blurb would scroll by at the bottom of the screen describing the object to you. Sometimes these were nothing of note, but others could really build some immersion and environmental storytelling. These were drastically cut down in RE3, and I'm not sure if they were on a time crunch with development or just didn't find it necessary, but I did miss it quite a lot. And this last one, I want to give a massive shout out to you guys. In my RE2 video, I pointed out how there were multiple Tyrant containers on the Mr. X helicopter. Without any knowledge of RE3, I questioned whether Umbrella was dropping more Tyrants all throughout the city. And you guys came through in the comments section telling me to look around near the end of RE3 and that I might actually spot those additional BOWs, and yes indeed, there they were. I found several corpses that looked just like Mr. X and one Super Tyrant in the final boss arena. If you guys hadn't told me ahead of time, I don't know that I would have been able to connect the dots to RE2, so that was insanely cool. My only question is, how the hell did they die? I've only seen Tyrants go down to rocket launchers and Tesla cannons, and these guys seem to be pretty well intact, so maybe you guys could educate me once again in the comments section. But that's all I've got for Resident Evil 3 and the original trilogy as a whole. Man, Resident Evil was already one of my favorite franchises of all time, but now having gotten to go back, had the privilege to go back and play the original 3 where it all began, it has climbed into my top 3, maybe top 2 series of all time. And that is in no small part to all of you watching. My love for these 3 games will forever be tied to making these videos and interacting with you guys in the comments section. The stories, the tips, tricks, the background information on all of these games truly made this experience that much more special. I'm gonna take a break from Resident Evil for a little while, but you guys let me know what other games in the franchise are must-plays. Code Veronica, Resident Evil 0, Umbrella Chronicles. I'll do it. You guys just let me know what I should keep on my radar. But with that, I think I'm done hunting the undead. It's time for me to chase even more dangerous game. I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.